was always quite a thrill to go into that large auditorium with all the students, and up on that north wall were these huge murals.
I saw them. I didn't even probably stop to evaluate them. But I know I appreciated them.
From what I hear, they somehow got lost.
And every once in a while, I'd call up somebody and say, where are the murals now?
Historically, they're probably one of the most significant pieces in Royal Oak history in terms of artwork.
So we have something here. This is a treasure, I think.
Get those things back on the wall. I mean, that, you know, that's the goal.
This, you know, this representation of where we came from, this is important and we must preserve it.
The mural project in general was one of the major efforts of the Works Project Administration. And so many of them have been destroyed throughout the whole country.
Well, there was a lot of this going on at the time. The WPA was everywhere. They did other things also. And the artists who were on welfare or whatever were allowed to paint.
It was at a time when the government was putting artists back to work. You know, things were tough in America, and that was like, that was a very important thing for the government to do, to say that art was important too, and that they wanted to put these artists together. It showed our values.
I graduated from this school, Royal Oak High School, in January 1935. And I was certain that I had watched them being painted almost the whole previous year.
Well, first of all, there were some plays. They had play practice on this stage. They would be painting at the time I saw it, and we had play practice at times, so everything was going on.
They put up the big scaffolding, and I remember that we thought the artists weren't working hard enough.
I'm sure that they became bored up there and wanted to talk to whoever they saw that was a human being.
I don't remember having a lot of conversation with the artists, except the one time that a friend of mine was chosen as one of the models. She is the model for the left-hand figure in the historical picture of Lewis Cass. So I heard her talk about that frequently.
Anybody coming into the auditorium would see those murals, and so that made it just a wonderful project and something to look at while you're waiting for the performance to start.
They were there when I arrived at the high school, having been painted not too long before. And not until later did I realize their value and their significance.
Andrew Maglia painted the paintings, started January 2nd, 1934, and he actually finished in June 2nd, 1934. And he had not quite completed the second panel. The first panel he painted was the arts panel, and the arts panel was getting a lot of acclaim from the DIA. There was a display of it in Washington, D.C. at the time, which tells a lot about the quality of these paintings even back then. The second panel he painted was the Lewis Cass panel, and that was the one he had not quite finished.
And often wondered why they depicted what they depicted. There's a lot of representations in those murals. General Cass became the civil and military governor of the Michigan Territory. And in 1819, he and a party were on a trip to the Saginaw Bay. And after about 12 miles north of Detroit, they came to rest under a large oak tree. And Governor Cass looked up into the branches of that tree and said, "This is truly a royal oak."
That was indeed Chief Pontiac that's in the painting, and that it is Fort Dearborn in the background, and the road with the covered wagon and is the path to Royal Oak from Fort Dearborn. And I originally think he was hired to do all three panels because it says that he stretched the canvases for all three and installed them in the niches in the auditorium here.
The artist's style was important. That certainly an artist's style, that's part of the artist's personality, and it's an expression of how the individual artist creates. And even though these panels were done by two different artists and they are very similar, there are differences in the panels.
Then we're not really sure what happened, but the third panel, which is the panel with Royal Oak High School, and more of the industrial arts type panel, was painted back in 1937 by Bronislaw Michalowski.
I'm very intrigued by the difference in the artistic interpretation on each piece. The first two pieces are much more romantic, they're softer. The last piece is much more in the vein of like a Diego Rivera style piece.
And then the one I like is the one with the Dondero in the background and the building showing that only one tower is there, symbolizing that education is never finished. And then coming from the building are all the career options that are available to our students.
The actual style of artwork, the idea of putting a very tightly woven composition together that is, it depicts the symbolism of the time, the importance of the different things that the artist was trying to portray with respect to Royal Oak and its history, with respect to the importance of education and the different career paths that students could take, and of course the importance of the arts. Pulling that all together, that was like, you know, the whole society coming together in these three panels. And I think that's really important to that time period because that was an emergence and importance of art coming out again and saying, you know, in the face of the Industrial Revolution, we're still here and art is still important.
Even in the Depression, we were able to have such marvelous murals painted and installed in our Royal Oak High School.
It's interesting about the history of the removal of the murals and what has happened since.
Well, the building was going under a major renovation, and we had lots of areas of the building in 1979 blocked off, and the murals were just coming down as part of a renovation in the auditorium.
The small group that made the decision to remove them was apparently ignorant of the historical significance of them.
The reason we were given on the faculty was that it was for acoustics, that the murals absorbed sound and they wanted the new modern science of acoustics to prevail.
It wasn't about the acoustics, it was about aesthetics.
The architect said he was told to give the auditorium a new look, so that's what he did.
That was one of the major reasons why the paintings weren't put back up, because they didn't want the old style in this new kind of modernized auditorium.
And that's what happens to history sometimes. It gets pushed into the background where another person wants to make their particular statement.
There was some objections, and there was attempts to try to find another location for them, maybe in a new library that was being built. But unfortunately, they just were rolled up and put away.
And my first recollection of where they were, there was a fan room above the gym that they were stored in. They're just roughly stored. They weren't crated or anything. They were just laying there on top of each other.
Yeah, they were just laying down here on the floor, just rolled up, not any kind of crates or any kind of protective cover or anything. In fact, they were stacked just on top of each other. And you can see now, I mean, it was water and debris and the paint's falling off. And it's not the perfect area to be storing treasures. It's all abandoned now.
And they were there for, I would say, a couple years anyway.
And I tried to keep track of where they were.
I also knew, working with the athletic department, that they were stored in the balcony of the gymnasium, which is an unheated and uncooled area.
I know they were stored under the stage at Adams.
And every once in a while, I'd call up somebody and say, where are the murals now?
I actually heard about the murals approximately 5-6 years ago when a colleague in the building here at Dondero had mentioned to me, well, you know, there used to be these murals.
I know I've heard, you know, the murals brought up over the, 20 years, you know, somebody wants to do this with them, they should be displayed here, maybe we should sell them, you know, but that's always kind of like faded away.
And there was talk at that time we were going to try and resurrect them, and it just sort of went by the wayside with so many other things going on during the school year.
And I was real pleasantly surprised when Mr. Briggs mentioned, it was either in the paper or to somebody, but I heard about it, that they found them. He went looking for them and found them, and they were crated, fortunately, and here we thought that they were gone forever.
We had a new Board of Education member elected, Gary Briggs, and he mentioned to me, you know, I think there's some murals in storage in the district we should take a look at.
So I started inquiring about them and was told, you know, that they were in, you know, really bad shape, that the paint was peeling off and they couldn't go back up.
We located them at Dondero High School. We made arrangements for some of the maintenance staff and a couple of key people to come down and let's just see what we have before we get very excited about anything.
What I wanted to do first of all is look at the murals and see what kind of condition they were in to see whether or not they could be restored or could be put back up.
And when we saw the crates and when we had it, we unrolled it, it was obvious at that time that not only were these impressive works of art, but they were very well maintained for not only being 70 years old, but being in storage for the last 25 or 28 years.
I was really surprised when we pulled them out and unrolled the one that as good a shape as they were in. I was really quite shocked.
And I think it was then when we realized that we had a little treasure buried in the gymnasium that we ought to get out into the daylight.
Overall, the condition was incredible, and I knew that they were very much restorable and very much able to be put back up at that point.
It's hard to describe the feeling because you felt like you were discovering something that had been lost for a long time that was so wonderful that people would be so excited about. And, you know, I was hooked.
From a education standpoint, we saw the value for our students, our staff, but then Royal Oak being a very special community with a very active historical society and the arts and the theater that are alive and well in this community, it was obvious very early that we had something that we could really develop into a community-wide project.
The next step that I knew that we had to do was photograph them. Like I said, the only photographs that I had seen before were the black and white photos that were in the 66 yearbook. So one of my employees, who's a photographer from Center Creative Studies in Detroit, volunteered to photograph these for us. So we went over there, and another friend of mine who is a builder in Royal Oak volunteered as scaffolding, and we built 2 towers of scaffolding on each side of the gymnasium, 15 feet tall, which was only about 1.5 feet to 2 feet from the ceiling in the gymnasium. And we mounted a camera, we put a pick across, which was like a walkway, and then mounted a bracket with the camera on it. And then we brought the paintings in underneath. Now we gotta line it right up to this corner.
I went too far.
I know, but that's how it moves easier.
Okay.
So you be in a little.
I got it. Looks good here. It's right here. Left.
Okay, lay it down. We marked off the areas We lit it with tungsten lighting so that we would, the paintings, really the only major problem or condition problem with the paintings is that they're very dirty. I mean, they need to be clean. And so in order to bring out the colors and the values of the paintings as much as possible, we lit them up, and lit them up pretty intensely.
I mean, I don't see any hot spots. It's pretty good. Well, let's go. Let's do it.
And they ended up, the photographs came out beautiful. We photographed them in 3 separate sections so that we could get a real good high resolution of the photograph. We had a local company here in Royal Oak, Tricolor, digitally scan the photographs and then rebuild the one large photograph, put the 3 pieces into one large photograph. And that's how we've been able to produce the prints and posters and other things like that.
I have worked at a couple of the fundraisers at the art fairs, and people have been so excited and wanting to learn about them and about the history. And I've even had people not from Royal Oak, and when they find out it's part of the WPA project, they're drawn to it.
And the interest just amazed me. And so many of these elderly students would walk by and they'd say, oh, I remember those, and tell her husband, we need one of those posters. We need that right now. You have to buy that for me. And it seemed to me they just lit up when they talked about the murals. And I think it brought back the high school days to them a little bit, you know.
When I got the news that there were people that had found them and there were people working to put them back up, I was very excited. That's my heart and soul in this building for 35 years, and they're a rich part of that history, and I'm very happy that they're restored. I already have the print up in my living room.
I knew that we weren't going to be able to probably fund the whole project through selling, you know, items unless we wanted to do this for several years, but I wanted to build excitement up in the community and, you know, show people and have people be able to own part of these murals and really be able to participate in it.
And I think the message is getting out now. It's been out in the papers, and I'm amazed how many people that never went to this school or new people in the community are getting behind it.
Just about everyone that I've talked to, young, old, people who remember the paintings, people who never saw them before, everybody's excited about this.
So I'm really hoping that we can get people to come forward, and if they haven't designated a project in their life, that they will designate the mural project to either put their time into, put their money into, or in any way they can support it.
This school here means a lot to me, you know, and you know, that's really where I came from, and I figured that I owe a little bit back, and so I'll do my part to get, if that's going to make it look nice, I'm going to have to work on it and make sure it gets done.
And I understand that there has been a fair amount of money already collected, and we will need a lot more.
I don't think a lot of people, when we first started looking at the murals, you know, when I first talked to the superintendent and some other people, realized the significance of these, that they really are national treasures that we are very fortunate to own.
Who would have thought three paintings could rally a community like that? It's nice to know that the arts has that ability.
This is for everybody. Whether you're 2 or 3, whether you're 84, it doesn't matter. Whether you went to this high school, it doesn't matter, because this is really important.
It's just a fabulous way to pull people together around something that's very important, and it helps us again to show what we value in this community, and to tell people loud and clear, this, you know, this representation of where we came from, this is important and we must preserve it.